Women tell me they're stressed, anxious, having trouble sleeping. I always say one option is to take 2 orgasms and call me in the morning. For centuries, sex has been all about men's pleasure. Finally, we're waking up to the idea that people with vaginas can and should enjoy sex, and that orgasming without a penis is a feature, not a flaw. What percentage of women do you think fake orgasms?
I think probably about 80% of women fake orgasms.
98%?
We're getting
I'd say 99.
all right.
Like 100.
I think it's probably also a factor that with men it's quite clear if someone's had an orgasm.
Why do you think women fake orgasms?
Well, personally, sometimes it just gets tiring and you're just like, okay, I want to be finished.
About 67% of women admit that they faked an orgasm, so it's pretty high.
I also feel like guys, it's easier for them to orgasm, and then for girls, it might take longer. And most guys don't really know, I feel like a lot of times, how to make girls orgasm.
Can you describe a clitoris?
Possibly. If you describe something too much, it kind of takes the beauty out of it.
What, the allure, the
allure,
mystery?
exactly, the mystery, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the
I mean,
mysterious quality of the clitoris is
no one
like
speaks
something to
explained.
behold.
It's very difficult in our society to have intelligent, open, honest discussions about sex. And because of this, it is women who typically suffer. Female anatomy is erroneously labeled as dirty. And from an early age, girls are giving messages about what a patriarchal society has determined a nice girl should and shouldn't do. Not knowing your anatomy is disempowering, and it puts women at a disadvantage in a sexual relationship. Many heterosexual women learn the mechanics of heterosexual sex from the least informed person, a male partner who, sorry guys, has statistically induced many faked female orgasms. Women who partner with women are less likely to have that disadvantage. And then there's porn. Many people get their practical information about sex from there. But that's like learning how to drive a car by watching The Fast and the Furious. It's acting, not real life. One of the biggest reasons that we're not satisfied with the amount and quality of sex we're getting is that we don't talk about it honestly and openly and accurately. So let's get on with my vagenda. The female orgasm has long been a mysterious and confusing thing for men and medicine to grasp. And not just how to make one happen. This dates back thousands of years to the dawn of medicine and the time of Hippocrates. Back then, male doctors used hysteria as some kind of umbrella term to cover a variety of issues, including fainting, anxiety, sleeplessness, irritability, and nervousness. Of course, these symptoms only happened to women. One cure was a visit to the doctor or midwife who used their fingers to bring about an orgasm. Husbands apparently unable to do the job. By the 19th century, hand-cranked vibrators were invented, and this could bring about that cure even quicker. Vibrators sound like fun, but other treatments for hysteria included removing the clitoris, so we're glad that era of medicine is over. Orgasm myths have been around for a long time. A common one is that a woman has to have an orgasm to make a baby, kind of like a man does. That's not how it works at all. And even the father of modern psychiatry was wrong about the female orgasm. Sigmund Freud thought that achieving orgasm through the clitoris was childish, and that the true path to adult sexuality for women was to achieve orgasm through vaginal stimulation only. Tell that to the multitudes of women who don't need a penis for an orgasm. Sadly, a lot of this BS is still floating around. I'm here with a couple of my friends, Dr. Lori Brado, who is a sex therapist and sex researcher, and Jocelyn Getty, who is a comedian and a writer. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for having us here.
Jen.
So we are gonna craft clitorises.
Ooh, good.
For years, the clitoris was ignored. It was barely studied. Then when it was, people basically called it a mini penis, as if the penis can't do multiple orgasms.
Good job, clitoris.
I'm gonna give you guys each a vagina and a urethra.
Of course, a vagina and urethra.
Which is
Exactly.
which? Just
Exactly.
Kidding. Just kidding.
Well, the vagina's the larger one, the urethra's on top. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna tape those together. Now, the clitoris is a lot larger than people think. It gets sort of written off as being kind of a smaller, inconsequential organ. We have some modeling clay in all different skin tones.
I'm gonna choose this color. I feel good about this.
Okay.
I'm going for this one.
All right. Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna roll it out and let's see what we can build.
Perfect.
And let's see what everybody's clitoris comes out like.
You know what? I'm just gonna make bold choices because life is all about
Bold choices? Well, sex is often about bold choices, right? It's about, you know, speaking up and saying what you want and what feels good to you and where you want to be touched.
It's amazing that people often have more comfort having sex than they do talking about sex. And in fact, we know that most women, even with sexual problems, will never talk to a healthcare provider or anyone else about their issues. The other thing is, I think that people believe that, you know, we've been together for so long, for so many years, they should just know how to touch me, they should just read my mind, they should know how I feel pleasure.
There's an idea that if something is right, it'll sort of magically happen for you. You won't need to have to ask for it or do anything to make that happen. And if you do, you're doing something wrong. Where I think it's actually very much the opposite.
Something I often say to patients in the office is, if you want something specific for dinner, you're gonna say what you want. You're gonna say, well, I'd like to have vegetarian food tonight, or I'd like to have a burger. And so if you never actually speak up and say what you'd like to have, then the chance that you're gonna get it is gonna be a lot less than if you'd actually said what you'd like.
Yeah, and the important thing is that there's not just burger on the menu. There is a whole buffet table of different options available to us sexually.
So how's that going over there, Jocelyn?
Oh, thank you for asking. I don't know what I'm doing. So I know that this is the vagina.
Yes.
I know this is the urethra. How and where are these things located?
So this is not to scale, obviously, because I'm trying to show, but the clitoris is actually a really large structure. And I would think of it more like a butterfly than that little tic-tac. So whenever people think about the clitoris, they just think about the glands. So the glands at the tip does have the most nerve endings, so that's good for a money shot for some people, but you know, everybody's different. And there's a root and a body, and then that's kind of the little connector here. And this is attached to the pubic bone. And then there's the vestibular bulbs that hang down around the side. And then there's these longer arms called the crura that are beneath the labia. And all of this is erectile, and all of this is sensory, and all of this can fill with blood. So there's all different places to explore. You don't just want to be stuck at this one point on the map. You want to kind of make sure that you've touched all your pleasure zones so you can really, you know, get what you deserve to have.
Yeah, go sightseeing. Don't just go straight to the summit, you're saying.
Exactly.
Wander around. Very good.
Exactly. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
And so if you start thinking about all the different ways then that you can push around the area, you might think, well, gosh, if I stimulated over my labia, that might feel good, right? Because there's bits that are under there. And you can start to understand when people are thinking about like G-spot that you're probably actually just hitting the clitoral part that's sitting over top of the urethra. That's probably a big myth you hear about, Lori, right?
Yeah, so the G-spot is an area of tissue in the come here position. So imagine if you were to take your finger and put it inside the vagina and then do that motion, that come here, right up on top here, what we call the anterior wall. For a lot of women, they'll notice an area of tissue that feels different than the area around it. And for some women, vaginal penetration during sexual activity, if that area is stimulated, they might experience what they will call a vaginal orgasm, although that's a bit of a misnomer because what the research actually tells us is that women who say they're having a vaginal orgasm, it's actually different parts of the clitoris that are being stimulated at the same time.
Well, yeah, because I feel like I've dropped a lot of money over the course of my life on various magazines that have taught me, in no uncertain terms, that the G-spot is the ultimate, the holy grail,
Right.
as we were. And if we don't get there or find that, then something has clearly gone wrong in the entire sexual exchange.
So that's unfortunately a sad consequence of misinformation. Actually, the original paper about the G-spot didn't even say that it was a discrete spot. So it's really where the erectile tissue of the clitoris kind of comes together and wraps around the urethra, and you can get to it by pushing through the vagina. And so for some women, they'll have the right amount of tissue there, and some women may have more of that tissue underneath the labia, and some may have more of that stimulation in their glands. And so it doesn't really matter how you get there. It's a party. Did you have fun at the party? That's what matters.
A lot of women that I see really focus on the end product, getting to the end, and the disappointment that they'll face if they don't reach that holy grail of orgasm at the end.
That's a really good point, because on different days too, different parts might engorge differently, just depending on how you're touched or what the stimulation is. And so some days, you know, the bulbs of the vestibule might get super engorged and be like this to emphasize on where the good erectile tissue is there. Lori doesn't want anybody to miss these spots. She's like, you got to get to the money spot down here. And some days it might be different in other places.
Yeah.
So, I'm about to go, real talk, on a trip with my husband, and I would like to know what kind of tools and tricks I can employ and other people can employ in order to have the best orgasms of their life.
So I was just in the middle of making a vibrator here, and I know I know it doesn't look much like a vibrator, but we know that vibrators come in all different shapes and sizes. And I'm not saying that a vibrator is necessary for orgasm, but for a lot of women who aren't aware of what places in their body or around their vulva give them pleasure, the vibrator can be a great tool because there's different settings, etc. So for example, a lot of women will say they actually don't like it when the clitoris is directly stimulated, especially if they're not aroused. They might say it actually hurts. So for a lot of women, they'll prefer to have this kind of hood piece on top of the clitoris stimulated. But you can stimulate and use different amounts of pressure right here. And as a woman gets aroused and excited, they fill with blood. The sensation changes from maybe a mild tingling to actually very, very pleasurable. So a vibrator can be a really versatile way of figuring out what feels good.
I think that's awesome, and I always put actually that on my gift guide list for people. I'm always like, get your partner a vibrator, get your partner a vibrator. All right, so what do we want?
I want amazing orgasms all the time.
What do you want, Lori?
I want to know what feels good and have a partner ask me every time what feels good and not assume what feels good.
I want orgasms for all my friends.
Yes, I'll drink to that.
Let's recap. If we can't talk about sex, then we can't talk about good sex. And let's face it, that's what we all want. For centuries, sex was a man's domain, but now it's our turn. If you have a clitoris, you're blessed with an organ that's sole purpose is to give you sexual pleasure. So you know what? Put it to good use. Know your body, and more than that, talk with your partner so that they know your body. It's about pleasure. It's about freedom. It's about agency over our bodies. That's what really floats my boat.